All right, this is Joey Savage, and on this episode of the Supplement Lab, we're going to be talking nitric oxide, pumps, and everything that is Plasm Surge on this episode of Supplement Lab. Okay, so we've got this new pump product. This is an exclusive inducible nitric oxide synthase type product. There's no nitrates or anything in it. And we decided that we were going to dedicate products to their respective pathways. So with Plasm Surge, we've got 6 grams of actual citrulline in it. Now, most people, when they're looking for citrulline, a lot of people like citrulline malate, and it's got a clinically substantiated dose, it's 6 grams, but actual citrulline, it's got substantiation at 3 grams, and even in one case, it's got substantiation at 2 grams. To get 6 grams of actual citrulline in Plasm Surge is a luxurious dose, to say the least. Second thing we've got in here is some glycer pump at a full 1500 milligram dose. Glycerol is really cool because it increases blood plasma, but at the same time, if you know about hibernating toads, it's actually the same molecule that they use as a natural antifreeze agent as they hibernate underground. Is that really useful? I don't know, but it's kind of cool. So another thing that we have is agmatine sulfate. Agmatine sulfate's in here at 1000 milligrams, which is a pretty good dose of agmatine. We'll talk about that here in a second and how it's involved in a little bit of nitric oxide and a little bit of urea cycle going on. Next is vasodrive AP. Now vasodrive AP is kind of interesting because it's actually something that's derived from casein. It's got 2 different tripeptides that are there, which have some clinical substantiation on decreasing blood pressure, and because they're so small, they get absorbed pretty well directly. Now, what are pumps? What do they do? If you're a noob to all this stuff like working out, well, you're thinking, I'm gonna drink a pre-workout. No, I'm so pumped up. It's got nothing to do with your energy level. It has to do with your blood flow. So nitric oxide is something that's usually formed endogenously by this amino acid called arginine, but it has terrible absorption. Or not terrible, just not as good as other options that are out there. But arginine enters the nitric oxide signaling pathway. It either comes from food that you eat or possibly the catabolic breakdown of your own muscle tissue. But it combines with actual oxygen that you breathe in order to form nitric oxide and the amino acid L-citrulline. Now, what's unique about the nitric oxide cycle is citrulline can be converted into arginosuccinate and then regenerated back into arginine itself. So if you supplement with the downstream metabolite of arginine, you can actually create more arginine. Arginine also plays inside the urea cycle via the arginase enzyme. It can get converted into ornithine, which also gets converted back into centralate into arginosuccinate and then arginine again. So these are positive feedback kind of things. Now, when I talked about agmatine earlier, agmatine's also involved in the breakdown of arginine. If it gets decarboxylated, it loses a CO2 group and it becomes agmatine. Now, agmatine can get further broke down into something called putrescine, which is really, really smelly. That's why it gets its name like that. However, arginine, it can also be converted, like I said earlier, into ornithine and be used in the urea cycle, but it can also be converted into citrulline via nitric oxide synthase. So, you can't actually supplement with actual nitric oxide. It's gas, and it usually comes from like lightning storms and stuff. So we end up having to use precursors like nitrates, like arginine, when it has its carboxyl group, or citrulline as a precursor to arginine to increase more nitric oxide. Now, nitric oxide itself, it'll actually stick to what are called membrane-bound G proteins. These things actually push more calcium outside of the cell. This causes a relaxation type of effect, and this is what's called vasodilation. So it increases blood flow to your muscles, it increases oxygen delivery to your muscles, and by doing that, it also puts more blood into the actual cells to cause more myofascial tearing and damage, and thereby that damage increasing protein synthesis. So you've got a full dose, 6,000 milligrams of L-citrulline. It's really great. You have another 1500 milligram dose of actual glycer pump, followed by another 1000 milligrams of agmatine sulfate with the inclusion of vasodrive AP and a little bit of N-acetylcysteine to increase what's called S-nitrosoglutathione. Check out my picture if you're interested in a little bit of that. Anyway, this has been pumps. This has been nitric oxide. This has been Plasm Surge. Tune in next time on the Supplement Lab.